Welcome to Dominate Your Day podcast. This is the podcast that adds value to leaders who want to make a difference in the workplace. We believe each person is unique and has a purpose they can live out every day and make an impact in the world. Here at Dominate Your Day podcast, we hear stories from leaders who have used their unique talents to transform themselves and their companies from the inside out.
All right. Well, welcome to Dominate Your Day podcast. I'm thrilled today to introduce you to Ryan Fahey. Ryan has written a couple of books, actually four. Is that right, Ryan? Four books is what I saw.
Yep.
Which is pretty cool. There's a lot of authors out there, but he's written on something I think that's pretty special, and that's around remote work. And we're going to be talking about that today. Ryan also has a consulting company, Fahey Consulting. And welcome to the show, Ryan. We're so glad you're here. I'd love for you to introduce yourself and tell the audience a little bit about you. I know you've got some interesting facts there. You could probably start with those. Those are always fun. So welcome. We're glad to have you.
Yeah, thanks, Dana, for having me and for all your listeners tuning in. This is going to be a fun episode, so thanks for spending some time with us here today. I do got to say, this is not scripted, Dana, but I do love your Monday motivation episode. So for listeners that are tuning in, definitely check out those Monday motivations. They're just so to the point, succinct and clear and just thought-provoking. So I'm excited to be here.
Thank you.
And yeah, I enjoy those.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Ryan. And it's fun because I'm one of these people when I see creative or copy or content, I'm just like, let's get to the point. What is it?
Yeah.
What is it? What are we going to talk about? So I appreciate you appreciating that. That's awesome. Yeah. So tell us about you and how you got into the world of consulting and being an author and helping publish books. So yeah, tell us about that.
Yeah, thanks, Dana. So it goes back to when I was a teenager. So when I was 12 years old, I was actually diagnosed with chronic migraines. And at the time, no one could figure out why I was getting these migraines. And so I was fortunate enough to be part of a study through a local university in Eastern Canada where basically I journaled and I documented my days and my weeks. And at the end of that study, basically what we found out was that the days that I was physically active, I slept better, I ate better, and I was less likely, if at all, not getting these migraine headaches. And so you can imagine at 12 years old how much of a foundational moment that is, where all of a sudden you realize, hey, if I move every day, I'm going to feel good. And so that really kind of sent me on this path to not only pursuing this idea of well-being and wellness, but also learning how to be well. So what are the things that I need as I was growing up and going through school and career and things like that. And I've been very blessed to make a career out of that, continuing to kind of pursue well-being and of course personal growth and development along the way. I went to university, studied sports science, human movement, and then morphed that into education. And so technically I'm trained in physical and health education is my area. But I've kind of moved from there over into this, I guess, it kind of on the edge of education and entrepreneurship and book writing and consulting. So I kind of live in that realm. If there is a realm, that's kind of where I'm at. So it's been exciting. It's really not what I expected. When I think back to even my early days as an educator, I never would have thought I would have 4 books out at this point. I never would have thought I would have a business at this point and that I'd be supporting other authors out there trying to pursue their dreams and getting their books out. So it's been definitely a lot of fun along the way, and it'll be interesting to see where things continue to go. I don't know if I got another book in me, Dana, or not, but who knows? We'll see. Maybe next year I'll get another one going. We'll see.
Well, it's a good testament to getting into your passion and then seeing where it takes you, and all of a sudden now you're writing and working with corporate leaders and getting in and I guess in the well-being space, which is huge right now. We know that the latest Gallup figures still are 7 out of 10 people are not doing well, and there's so much that's coming out of this pandemic. I know we're going to talk today about just remote work, but it's a continual thing and we're seeing it in different generations. And I bet in your research, you've probably seen quite a bit and even your personal journey. And I love that you said you got to move. And that is, as I age, it's all about moving every day and the well-being of what I'm putting in my body and what I'm doing with my body every day. So I'm glad you were talking about that. So what brought you on this journey to write? How did you get into writing?
Yeah, so that journey is interesting. It was actually back in 2011. I was in university doing my undergraduate studies, and I was just passionate about writing. I was terrible, but I was passionate about it. Um, I was actually so bad at one point that my university professor was like, "I don't think you're going to make it unless I coach you." And so luckily he took me under his wing. And here I am now 4 books later. But it started off as a blog. The blog was called Wellness Network Blog. It was on that old Blogspot platform. So if any listeners are familiar with that old platform, super clunky, but it was free. And so I ended up writing on there just around topics about well-being and personal growth and development, books, interviewing athletes, things like that. And I kept that blog going for a few years and just continued to write because I enjoyed writing. I enjoyed the process. I enjoyed unpacking well-being and learning and distilling information for people. But eventually what ended up happening was about 2015 or so, I ended up finding that I was writing. I began to write out of expectation. Like I started to have different publishing, online publications, wanting content at specific times, asking for specific content. And I was getting away from writing as a hobby and getting into writing because I had to write. And I found that I didn't really like that at the time. And so I pulled back a little bit and I started, I took a year off. And then in 2016, 2017 is when I got on a platform called Medium. And for folks that are listening in, Medium is a great platform for freelance writers, great platform to get your message out. And it was really up and coming at that time. And so I started freelance writing on there, again, just out of passion. And next thing I know, I was writing for some of the biggest publications on Medium at that time. And I just continued to enjoy it. I wasn't being told to, write this way or do this. I was just totally my creative self coming into my work. And so I did that for a few years. And then I decided to kind of compile all those blogs on Medium together into my first book. But really it was the second book that was the coming out party for me as an author. And that book is called Your Best Decade. And I was writing that one when I was actually teaching abroad in the Middle East. And I was just, I knew I had this idea for a book. I knew I really wanted to write about well-being and how do we really look at this decade and look at the big 3 areas of our lives and focus in on how we can be well in those areas over 10 years. But I didn't have the confidence to press send. And so I was like, oh, should I publish this? Should I wait? Do I need to add chapters? Do I need to do anything different? But fortunately, I overcame that and hit send and published that one right around in late 2018, early 2019. So that's kind of how the journey started. It's kind of gone from there. But along the way, there were definitely a lot of ups and downs. And that's one of the reasons why I've started this author coaching program is to really help accelerate authors through those ups and downs because I learned a lot of hard lessons. I did not have a lot of mentors who were authors at the time when I was publishing my first book. And if I can be that support, be that coach for someone else and just help them through the process and allow them to reach greater success much earlier, it's totally worth it. So I guess that's a little bit about how I stumbled into it. It's been a fun learning curve along the way.
So it's funny because you started off with your professor having to help you because you didn't enjoy writing. So there was a pivotal moment there, I guess, where he encouraged you in your
Absolutely.
writing and then gave you that confidence that you can do this.
Yes, absolutely. It was a kind of a combination of moments in my life. It was a moment where I was really failing at everything. Like I was failing in university, failing in papers, and we know this when we talk about personal growth development and positive psychology. We talk about the gap, right? And how do you close that gap? And for me at that point in my life, I had so many gaps between where I was and where I needed to be successful as a student. And so it was a series of getting really hyper disciplined with my studies, investing in a tutor, investing in a mentor, listening and going to the writing center, allowing this professor to help me. And, 2 years later, I was on the dean's list at the university. So a lot of people don't know that story, Dana. So thanks for probing that.
Yeah.
But yeah,
No,
it's just, yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
I think it's one of the, I do a lot of writing now, and I think it was one of those things I always tell myself, oh, you're not that good. That's not you just think you can do that, but there's other people better than you. How we talk to ourselves, and then it's just like anything else, taking the action and just start doing it. And I find myself kind of like you, like I could not, I told my husband last week, I couldn't stop writing. It kept coming out. So, but when it's in your passion area, right? When it's in something you're passionate about, like you were talking about well-being versus something that you're not passionate about, it's harder to write about. And there's a lot of people out there that think they can't write, but really they've got the story in them. And it sounds like that's what you're doing with your coaching program
Yeah.
with authors, is helping them kind of create what you wish you had when you were trying to create it. So somebody came along and helped you, or how did you get that book published?
Yeah, so I started knocking on doors and, did a lot of research around, should I self-publish? Should I go the traditional route? I was rejected by multiple publishing houses. I was told I was too young to publish a book. And then I got thinking, do I need to look like Socrates to publish a book? Because that would
Well,
be
you got the
interesting,
beard going and the
right?
glasses,
Right? Yeah, so long story short, I ended up going through an indie publishing house out of British Columbia, Canada, for that book, and I'm glad I went that direction. But yeah, it was almost like the Shark Tank for anybody that watches that
Mhm.
show, just kind of pitching this concept of a book out there and just really trying to figure it out as I went. But you said some really important things there, Dana, that I want to touch on, and one is I talk about this in one of my books is imposter syndrome, and I had major
Mm.
imposter syndrome when I went to publish Your Best Decade. I was concerned, what are people going to think of me if I say the wrong thing, or is somebody going to be offended if I say this way, and what about
Mm.
do I need to be older to have this book published, because I have publishing houses telling me I'm too young. And so some of the research I've looked at, something like 70% of adults will deal with imposter syndrome in their lives. And I've been there, I've done that, and I, it continues to bubble up every now and again. But it's definitely something that we don't talk about enough, and I think it's important to push through
Mhm.
that, and to surround yourself with people that can believe in you and support you along the way, and just help you get whatever it is out, whether it's music, art, books, a podcast. I think that's really important for sure.
And I'm glad you brought that up. We're on a whole nother trail, which I love. Um, it, I have to keep saying to myself, thoughts aren't real, right? So if you're thinking something and you have to stop and pull that out and say, is that really, why am I thinking that? Where did that come from? And I think learning that mindset and learning how to do that, especially as an entrepreneur, especially as an author, and especially as someone that has had a lot of rejection, and you're trying to kind of keep going, and you have to keep knocking on doors and not give up. And I think that's the story I hear there as well. So when you wrote your best decade, you said, okay, got one in the belt. How did you, and then COVID happened, and then you started seeing the thing with remote work. What kind of, what passion were you pulling up to write that book, and why did you feel like you needed to get that out at that point? It was 2021, I guess, when you wrote that book,
Yeah, a great
right?
question. So I should paint a picture here for the listeners that are tuning in. But um, I was living in Canada at the time, in central Canada, and our winters are awful. There's no getting around that. And we were into what was be the second winter. I feel like it was forever, but it was the second winter of the pandemic. And
Mm.
we were in and out of lockdowns. You couldn't really go anywhere. And somebody that's really into well-being and being physically active every day, it's very, very hard to do that when everything is closed, including pools and recreation centers, and it's minus 50 outside. And you're
Can't
kind of
even
limited.
imagine.
Yeah.
I'm in
So
Texas, you're in Canada, and I can't even imagine anything with a minus in front of it.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
oh,
Yeah, yeah. So
wow.
I could go on with stories on that, but here I was. I guess I was running one day in these cold temperatures, and running for me is what I call a keystone habit. And this is something that James Clear talks a lot about in his book Atomic Habits, which is a great book.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, if I'm a pretty optimistic person, and I would consider myself somebody that prioritizes physical activity and the pursuit of trying to be well based on my earlier diagnosis, and not, getting these migraines and being sick, and not feeling well. So, it was the height of the winter, and I was running outside. I remember thinking, if I'm struggling, how many other people out there are really struggling? They were kind of thrown into this new way of working if they haven't worked remote before, or their industry hadn't been remote before. Um, they've been muddling through it, maybe thinking it might last a month, it might last 6 months, and here we are almost a year at this point. When I look back at when I started the writing process, so that prompted me to do some research. Are there books out there to support the well-being of remote workers? And there was one book out at the time, and it wasn't really even
Really?
specific on
Just
the.
one?
Yeah, just one. And it wasn't
Wow.
even specific on well-being either. It was just called Remote by Jason Fried, and it's a great book. And it was, I think, way back in like 2016 or 15 that I read it. And it was actually getting so popular at that time that he went to his publishing a house and said, can you release the rights of this so we can just give it for free, because people are struggling and that people want to buy this book and they can't get it. And the publishing house said no. And so then I got thinking, this is a tremendous opportunity. Like, if I can share some strategies and some ideas and concepts and some experiences that I've had in a book that can help support other people as they're navigating trying to be well in this new way of working,
Mm-hmm.
maybe I can make a difference here. Maybe I can support and have some sort of an impact. And so that really prompted it. And um, to summarize this story really quick, I traveled back east to Eastern Canada for the holidays that winter, and we had 14-day quarantine lockdowns. And so I was at my sister's house in the woods with the fire on, the deer in the backyard, and I just wrote this
Mm-hmm.
manuscript in 14 days in quarantine. And I felt like Mark Twain. There's a story like Mark Twain goes up
Yeah.
in the cabin. Yeah, it was like it kind of felt like that, but
Wow.
yeah, no regrets. I got it done and got it out, and it was it met the market, and it's helped a lot of people. So it's been great.
Well, you mentioned several things there too that I think our listeners, there's a lot of people that listen that are leaders in the workplace, and they kind of would like to start something on their own, but they don't know what they want to do, or maybe they've got a book in them and they're not sure how to get going. And sometimes it's just looking around and seeing what the need is. And sometimes when we see that need and we can feel it, we think, why isn't everybody else seeing it? It's because that's the gift we've been given to share at that time. And it sounds like that is the gift that you were given with your health, your passion for health and passion for writing. So it's interesting when we got together beginning before the show started, one of the things I brought up is that I was with a group of women. This is a women's group I belong to here in Dallas, and I was speaking on the future of work, and we sent out a little survey and said, what do y'all want to talk about? What are y'all concerned about? And their number one thing was how to keep their employees engaged in remote work, because remote, as we know, is here to stay and it's not going anywhere. And and then today I was talking to one of my clients, and there was 6 women on the call, all of them moms, all of them snowed in the last 2 days with their kids working. And the one thing they all said to me, several of them said, we are so fortunate to work for this company that lets us work from home. We feel so blessed and so fortunate. They've been, one of them said, I've been with other companies and they would never let us do this. And this is amazing. And I thought, they have engagement in an amazing way. And so contrasting that with how do we keep them engaged when the remote, and then the ones that are like, wow, this is amazing. And so where are we now in this spectrum? And where do you think we are since, 2021 when you wrote the book?
Yeah, this is great, Dana, and it's fantastic to hear these stories, of folks that are out there engaged, and at the heart of at the center of that is the heart of gratitude, and I think that's really where it starts because, my book is focused on that employee, that individual who's out there
Mm-hmm.
trying to navigate their career, trying to navigate, how do I be well in this way of working, and it's really nice and uplifting to hear those stories that there's other folks out there that are engaged, and that they've set the conditions for that. But yeah, it's interesting when the pandemic was full on. I think the majority of folks were treating remote work like some experiment, and I mean, it felt like everything was an
Yeah.
experiment. Like, is this going to work? Is this not going to
Mm-hmm.
work? And then, it kept going on. It just kept going on and on and on. And then I think, at least from my experience and what I've seen across other sectors and some of the research I've done for the book, it's, this is just going to be a way to do things. And, the companies that embrace that, the organizations that embrace that, I think they came out, probably in the same place they would have had everybody been in the office and there hadn't been a pandemic, or they came out further ahead because they were a little bit leaner
Mm-hmm.
financially. They were able to invest in opportunities for their teams to connect and not just sit in an office together. So they were able to take that money and do retreats. They were able to take that money and do other kind of things to invest in their employee engagement and well-being. Um, and so now we're at this very interesting juncture at the time of this episode where you're seeing still that push and pull between, okay, the pandemic's over, this was all just a fever dream, come back to the office. But now you have people like what you're describing, and folks like myself who have literally built their lives around this new model, and the software has caught up to that. The ability to do this in a more kind of fluid way is here, and it's allowed our work to kind of ebb and flow with the responsibilities of our lives, and it's allowed folks who have embraced the remote work opportunity to have not only added flexibility, but just to have I guess a bit of peace and longevity as they embrace it over the long haul versus just kind of going at it month to month. So it's a very interesting juncture. I actually have another article coming out on this because some big companies like
Good.
Google have said it's time to come back to the office, but my thinking is like, well, what have we been doing for 3 years? Like, people have
Yeah.
not worked for 3 years now. Like, so
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot we can talk about in terms of setting up the conditions for success in that way. But I think, like you said, Dana, remote work is here to stay, and I think as technology continues to advance, and I think as the shadow costs that individuals have to face, like the cost of housing, the cost of transportation, all of these things that are just driving people further and further out, we need to continue to embrace remote work for people's longevity and health and well-being for sure.
So what do you think on that note? What do you think is the future of work, when you think about it as we look out the next 5 to 10 years,
Yeah.
and what's going to be different than today?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think not every job has the opportunity to go remote, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
definitely a reality. Like my wife, she works in healthcare. You
Mm-hmm.
still need to be forward facing in a lot of different ways. So I don't think every industry will go there. I think that many industries will continue to dabble in it. So, for example, could we have remote prescription writing be more of a kind of a common thing, right? In the medical field, I know it's becoming more and more common. That trend will probably
Mm-hmm.
continue. I think you're going to see we're seeing a lot of what we call geographical arbitrage, where, say for example, you're working with a tech company in California, but it's way more affordable to live in Iowa, and your partner's family is in Iowa, so you move to Iowa and you earn the salary of Silicon Valley, and you live in a more affordable place like small town Iowa. And so this is starting to happen a little bit more, and there's actually some competition that I've seen in the U.S. between states around this. to really incentivize people to move to different neighborhoods. Bring your money, bring your California salary or your New York City salary to West Virginia or wherever, because we want that. And we've also seen countries start to embrace this, like Costa Rica. You can get some visas to work remote there. Portugal is another country that's really embraced this. Malta had a really nice incentive going on where basically if you had like a proof of work statement and you earned a certain amount of money, you could go there for up to a year without paying any taxes.
Oh, wow.
And a free visa. So we're starting to see that a little bit more, and I think that will continue to happen. And the other thing too that I think is going to happen is, for any listeners here that have been to Disney, I always share this. I think this is kind of funny, but there's the hologram of Jack Sparrow doing his thing from Pirates of the Caribbean, and you're like, wow, that's like so cool. But imagine when that holographic technology gets affordable enough for software companies, the Apples, the Googles of the world to have it. So Dana, you and I could potentially be in my office as two holograms having this conversation.
That'd be fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I don't think we're that far away from that. And so I think that there's a lot of things that are going to continue to advance in ways that will allow us to continue to not only have remote work, but have the ability to connect in our remote work. And I think that that's critical as we move forward too.
I'm glad you brought that up because we have a loneliness epidemic
Yeah.
going on, right? People that just got used to being alone and now they're not going back to the office and they're not putting their screen on and they're not connecting. And this was the question that I heard from a lot of these female leaders that I was speaking with, and they want to engage that person that's kind of, usually they could walk by the cooler and see that they were okay. Or, how do you check somebody's well-being when you sense something's off and they're living in Iowa and you're in Silicon Valley?
Mhm.
Um, how do you sense that as a leader? How do you sense that as a, what are the things you can put in place to make sure you're connecting with them on a regular basis and that, well-being is key now in the workplace? And how do we do that as leaders effectively
Yeah.
for each employee? I think it's a big question.
I think you're spot on with that, and that is a great question. And I can share some examples of things that I've seen work and that we're doing on the team
Oh, I love that.
that I work with. And what you bring up is very interesting because what we're talking about there too are those we call emotional intelligence skills, and that's something I talk about in the book. And a lot of that work really comes out of Daniel Goleman's original work. I think he
Hmm.
was kind of the original thought leader around emotional intelligence. Um, looking at those soft skills and really applying them as a leader to your team in this remote setting, I think is one way. Another way, another thing that I've seen work really, really well is one of the teams that I work on. Every Monday, we set aside time just to connect. So it's usually the first 30 to 40 minutes of our team call. It's a small team. And we literally just keep it informal. We talk about our weekends.
Hmm.
We have some parameters about it. Like we don't talk about politics. We
Hmm.
just talk like what did your family get up to this weekend? What books are you reading? Did you watch the football game? Did you watch something on Netflix? And we
Hmm.
literally just take that time to connect. And so it's really great because, we get to get a bit of a snapshot about how do people spend their time outside of work. It humanizes us a little bit more.
Hmm.
It relaxes us because it's a Monday morning, and Monday mornings in January are very hard. And so just carving out that space and being intentional about making sure that happens each week has really energized our team and really kept our team very, very tight. Now it's a small team, but that is a strategy that I've seen work really, really well. And so it's something maybe that folks can adopt there too. But I would say, the biggest thing is when you're talking about loneliness, there's a lot there. And I think that, we have to not just communicate, we have to find ways to connect. And figuring
Hmm.
out how to do that is important. And for those out there who are working remotely on teams, one of the things that I've seen too outside of work is finding ways to be increasingly social outside of your work. So how do you trade
Hmm.
in the water cooler conversation when you don't have it anymore. Maybe that means you join the local book club in the new town that you've lived in, or if you're a young mom, maybe it's going and connecting with a young mothers group, or connecting with your local church as an example. And so that's something I've had to do. I've had to be very creative because winter can be quite isolating, and it's cold and it's dark, and it can get a little quiet sometimes. And so I've joined a running community in my local area that keeps me social, keeps me out, keeps me going. And of course, getting to church and things like that has been really great too for my mental health. So I think it goes back to just figuring out, okay, I need something. What is that something that I need that I'm not getting at my work now, and where can I go to find that? And I think if you can answer that question, I think it can really help in the long run.
I love how you brought up the running and getting community with your church, or being a part of community outreach, something in your area. One thing that I realized after studying all those 5 areas of well-being from Gallup, and one of them is social and how much social we need. I learned how to play mahjong, and I've been playing mahjong once a week, and that is just, it's like nothing gets in the way of
Yeah.
that 2 hours with my girlfriends to do that. And it has been, for all of us, it's been great. And who would have thought? But we all knew we needed it. It was just different. It's one of those things. So being able to really be, what I'm hearing from you say, Ryan, is find out, be intentional about what you're lacking in your well-being areas. It might be the social, it might be the community, it might be physical, it might be your financial. Might be your purpose. Figure out what that is and get an accountability partner to help you find that and do that together. My accountability partner, or my Mahjong, and I have one girl, that friend that I run with. So those two things kind of keep me making sure I do what I need to do to keep my sanity. And it sounds like you're doing the same with your running, but it's a work. You have to be intentional about it. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, so I appreciate you bringing that up. What's coming up for you now as we think about that, as we think about well-being and intentionality?
Yeah, no, I think you're 100% on spot on with that, Dana. One of the things I was going to say there, I'm blanking on it actually right now, but
That's
um,
okay.
yeah, I think. Oh yes, this is what I was going to say is I think this is where journaling really comes in, and this is something I'm a huge proponent of.
Mm,
Obviously, you've heard my story. I was 12 years old and I was given a journal, said figure this out,
I love it.
um, and so I think this is where I really like journaling because it can really leave those breadcrumbs behind. You can go back and look at those breadcrumbs. How was I feeling at this point? Okay, and what was the shift? What was the change? And if you're just embracing remote work now and you're like, I'm missing something, if you have a journal, you can go back and retrace that. And you might be able to figure that out a little bit more clearly, a little bit more efficiently. Okay, maybe this is what's missing in this domain of my well-being. And okay, now I'm going to write how I'm going to figure out how I'm going to approach that. So that's just something that I wanted to throw in there. That's something I also talk about for anyone, but definitely for remote workers to continue to journal as well.
I'm a big proponent of journaling. I created the Strengths Journal to help people write down every day what you want to achieve that day, why, and how you're feeling about your well-being, and what are things that you're doing that you're afraid of. I just had to have prompts because I find the days I don't fill that out, I feel like I've just let my day happen. But there's something, and you talk about this as a 12-year-old. There's something that is very relaxing about getting a lead pencil and writing. I don't know, there's some kind of connection to the brain when you're doing that, when you're putting pencil to paper, that's just getting everything out of our cluttered mind, as we talked about earlier, getting thoughts out there, and really seeing what we're really thinking and just getting them out. So
Yeah.
I appreciate you bringing that up. That's a great point. And I think I was talking to somebody this morning about that. I said, would you rather have a digital journal, or a print, something you write, and they go, oh, I have to have something I write in because I can't process unless I write it out. And I think there's so many things in our life that are digital. It's kind of nice to be able to put it on paper. So, Ryan, as you look forward to 2024, we're just in the beginning stages. It's January. It's cold outside. It's um, book number 4 is out the door. What do you see ahead for you this year as a consultant, as an author, as helping people with their bringing their books to the world? What is it that you're passionate about?
Yeah, great question. Well, first I got to say I'm going to Mexico for a week. I am done with winter,
Ah,
so that's
yay!
on the radar. That's going to happen.
Fun.
Yeah, I'll definitely be doing some journaling there. There's nothing like a little wave therapy, you know what I mean, to help with that.
Oh,
So
love it.
should be good.
Love it.
But yeah, honestly, I gotta say, Dana, I've spent so much time in the last couple of years putting books out and doing just a lot of writing, that I'm honestly just excited to kind of sit back a little bit and see where that goes. Being a little bit more mindful of all the other things I got going on in my life. I'm a recent dog dad, so we have a puppy. Um,
Oh, is
yeah,
this the
yeah.
dog I saw Dash, named Dash? Is that right?
Yes, yeah, Dash. Yeah, you got it. Yeah, he's being good right now.
Oh,
But
oh.
yeah, just embracing this kind of new season of life, having multiple books out. They're all kind of very different topic areas too, under that kind of personal growth umbrella. So I definitely, I have a couple speaking engagements lined up later this year, traveling a little bit, which I really love. But at the end
Mm.
of the day, just kind of pacing myself a little bit more and really just kind of sinking in and repurposing the book knowledge in different ways on a medium and on social media and things like that. So that's kind of what's next. But yeah, we'll see. I'm kind of open as well. It's one of those things. It's almost like it's like when there's an old saying around this. It's like when you're not trying to attract things, you attract things, and
Hmm.
you know what I mean. So I feel like I'm at that point in my
Oh,
life
I
where
know
I'm,
what you mean. Yeah.
yeah. So we'll kind of see what happens, but who knows? Maybe this winter will get the best of me, and I'll decide to write another book, and you and I will be on a show next year talking about
Another
that. So we'll
call.
see.
Well, and I think what you say is so important. Um, Not every season we're supposed to be just drilling it down and getting. This is a season of pausing and reflecting and building what you've been planting.
Hmm.
And I think so many times we think we have to churn, 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 and really life it can be so much easier when you take these moments to kind of just rest in what you planted and watch it grow, and then continue to take care of it. And it sounds like that's what you're doing, so that's exciting. So Ryan, is there anything that we didn't get to bring up today on the subject of remote work or on thriving in the workplace with your well-being, that you want to bring up now before we close out? I want to make sure we didn't miss anything that from your body of work.
Yeah, no, that's great, Dana. Just a couple things too. So in that book, How to Thrive in Remote Working Environments, also applies to hybrid work as well. So if anybody's working hybrid, you can definitely take some of those pieces and apply them. But
Mm,
there's a couple things in there too that are unique. One of them is I have an energy audit in that book where it's a series of questions that help guide the individual worker to really figure out where's their energy going through the days, what's filling their cup, what's taking from their cup. So that's
mm,
something in there too that I want to highlight. Another thing too is I created what I call the 5-step energy amplifier blueprint. And that blueprint is a series of questions and actions or suggested actions broken down on different parts of your day to help you kind of be in this thriving state over time. And I think it's just
mm.
kind of a granular way of looking at our well-being in our remote and hybrid settings, and then building that out day in and day out and using that as a guide. And readers have told me they really like that, and they kind of take it and make it their own, which I think is great. You can definitely do that. And then the final thing that I will say is that boundaries are the most important thing, I think, and routine is super super important.
Mm.
And you're from Texas, so I gotta say it, but I am a huge Matthew McConaughey fan.
Oh,
And
yeah.
his book, Green Lights, one of the things he says in there is you need structure to dance in the rain of freedom. And I really like
Mm.
that, and I think that we need structure in our lives. Structure is a good thing, but also being flexible and then dancing in that freedom that comes from having good structure. And so I think that applies to remote work and hybrid work too. And I would definitely encourage folks to read Green Lights. That was a very interesting and entertaining book for sure.
Yes, I love Matthew McConaughey and that book. That is, I'm so glad you brought that up because I think it's learning that find that freedom, dance in the freedom. I love that. That's a great ending point. So Ryan, thank you so much for being with us today. And if our listeners want to connect with you or get your books, what's the best way they can do that?
Yeah, so you can definitely go on Amazon. All my books are on there. You can just type in Ryan Fahey, spelled Fahey. You can also go to my website, just Fahey consulting.org. So faheyconsulting.org. I'm still on X or Twitter or whatever it's called now. I don't know if anybody else is still on there, but if you are, I'm on there. I'm at WellnessRF on Twitter.
That's great. Well, Ryan, thank you for all the greatness you're bringing to the world and how you saw a need and you filled it with your content that you didn't even know you could create. And somebody brought it out of you. So thank you for sharing your story. And we wish you the best and can't wait to hear what next year brings for you after you have this amazing year. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Dana. Thanks for having me, and I hope to be back sometime soon.
Great. Thanks.
You have been listening to Dominate Your Day podcast. If you're ready to transform your life and workplace from the inside out, go to danawilliamsco.com and set up a discovery call. We would love to connect with you and equip you with some helpful resources. Thank you for listening today, and please take a moment to subscribe to Dominate Your Day wherever you listen.